Hello and welcome to Curious Conversations. We are your hosts, Carly and Mandy, and today we are discussing the Menendez brothers case with a special guest that we know you guys love, Connie Hall Scott. How are you doing, friend?
I'm good. It's so good to see you both in the same place again.
I
Yeah.
know.
Well, we're glad to be back. We've had a little bit of a break. And so, we just thought, hey, let's kick off by doing a little catch up. So, Mandy, do you want to kick us off with that?
Oh my gosh. So I'll have to like shrinky dink this because it has been a minute, right?
Right.
Um, Most recently, I will say I just got back from a trip in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, Winterfest. It's a thing. I've never been up there during the cold weather. So I took about 1 million pictures of lots, like am I going to look
Uh-huh.
back through that? I don't know. But cool thing on the way back, which to be continued, stopped by a curiosity shop. So that was a lot of fun. Got a lot to share there for maybe future episode.
All right, couple of things. You talk about taking pictures of lights. Do you know what I do every year? I
What's
take a
that?
million pictures of fireworks.
Hmm.
Yes.
For 4th of July, and it's just not the same when you look back. It's like, oh, I remember that
Yeah.
being much more grand.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. Yeah. I
really
think I
fun.
do that too. Like, oh, here comes the last one. And it's like 100. It just looks like a blur of color.
Yes.
It's not really special. It's a
Uh-huh.
moment thing. Connie, do you do that? Take pictures of things you're not going to look back at?
Yeah, I do. My camera is not my camera. My iPhone is full. My computer is full. I rarely print photos anymore, but I have
Oh.
thousands and thousands of pictures of my kids growing up before people started doing things online and keeping their photos there.
Yeah, it's
I was
different.
just, yeah, I was just looking through a bunch of old photos. It's just have a million of them. What are you going to do with them? Let's look through them, I
Yeah,
guess.
Yeah,
I'm
and
not sure.
one of my I guess bucket list goals is to eventually organize them all and put them online so that I don't lose them for future generations who probably don't care.
Yeah. They'll be like, why do you have those pictures on paper? That's
Yeah.
weird. Well, I did get to see a couple of pictures, Mandy, from the Curiosity Shop, and I cannot wait to talk about that and go. I want to go.
Yeah, you'll love it. And I took so many pictures. I didn't even end up buying anything. My pictures were the gift.
That's
I
fun.
love it. I think that's fantastic. Well, Honey, we
Hmm.
haven't seen you in a good while, and I know you've got some great projects going on. Tell us what you've been up to.
Well, I'm starting a podcast of sorts with a friend, Tammy Parker Painter, who you both know,
And
because like
love.
yeah, we're obsessed with true crime, and it kind of started with the whole Keesland Roberts case, mostly for me, as Carly, you've been heavily involved in, and it just kind of led into other areas, and I get obsessed on a particular thing and try to figure it out, and unfortunately, so far, I have broken no case, but we've got some good leads, I think.
Awesome. Awesome. I love it. Well, we cannot wait for that. We love true crime. We love you.
No,
So
love
yeah, that's going to be amazing.
it's gonna be fun, and I know we'll be collabing a lot.
Yeah,
Yes,
I look
absolutely.
forward to that.
Me too. Oh, and I'm writing a book. I won't get it, well, two books, but the one I'm focused on right now is called Houses Where Things Happened. And it is a mixture of true crime and all the things that have happened in houses. Um, it's interesting how one house will have a link to another house and another story. And it's kind of, I think, a fresh approach to telling the crime and adding in the haunted stuff too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a perfect fit with you leading the ghost tours for so many years in Dalton. That'll be a really good mix between the true crime and the ghost side, right?
I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be fun.
All right. Well, you're going to be busy.
Aren't we always?
Yes,
Yes.
always.
Creative people are always doing at least five things.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I have definitely been busy. We are actually taking next month off to travel on a boat, which is something very new. We bought a boat and we're going to be traveling part of the Great Loop, which prior to owning a boat, I had no idea what the Great Loop was. But it's a lot bigger than what we're going to be able to accomplish in a month. Eventually, we'd like to do more of it. But we will actually be taking our boat from the east coast of Florida, going through Okeechobee, up the west coast into Alabama, Mississippi, kind of all up in there, and eventually land in the Chattanooga River. So very excited about that. I hope to have a lot of videos and photos and stories to share from that fun trip. So
Yeah, you
that's what
talk
I'm
about
up to.
taking pictures. Like that is going to be hard not to take a million.
I know. I'll have a whole bunch of them.
No,
Okay, well, I'll say that again.
I'm looking forward to seeing those pictures. I love it when you guys post. I feel like it's a way that helps us stay connected.
It's like a little catch up. I know. What did we do before social media and texting?
I don't know, but yeah, we're going to have the whole thing like straight from the boat. We're still going to continue with our podcast. So we'll
Oh,
have to do like that little boat check in. Like, what is it?
Yes.
What is the land to sea thing? What is that? To
Oh,
say it. Oh my gosh. And it was a movie title too. Hey, I ruined it. I don't know what it is.
well, we
It's
can
a
all
well,
pick it up. It's like a puzzle.
yeah,
yes, yeah.
that's
I'll come back with that, but it's gonna be neat when I do.
right. And there's your puzzle of the day, folks.
Yep.
All right. So I want to ponder something before we really jump into the Menendez cases. But I wanted to ask Connie, Mandy, you and I have discussed Gypsy Rose on a previous episode. And if you have not listened to that, definitely go back and check it out. Um, Connie, I just wanted to kind of hear your thoughts on that case. Did you really look into that one?
Oh, you're going to be so disappointed. I didn't. I really have. I know, isn't that weird? Because it seems like I get into all the true crime stuff. I know a little bit about it. Am I saying it right when I say Munchausen by proxy?
Hmm?
Yep.
And I think that's a horrible thing for a parent to do to a child. And it kind of reminds me of the Menendez case in that, how are these people, how are we shaping our children? Um,
Yeah.
in some cases, apparently, some really bad things go on.
Yeah, just over time being able to watch uh, her and just how different she was under the thumb of her mother was just shocking. It's almost like, wow, she was just a normal person.
Yeah.
Um, it just gives you that question of, gosh, is murder ever an acceptable response to abuse? And I think you've got those extreme cases. I'm sure you have some that are not extreme and it's just an excuse. But I feel like we kind of tread on that today a little bit with the Menendez brothers of at what point do we go and say, hey, you know, there was no other option. So just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on the Gypsy Rose case.
Yeah.
I'd definitely check out our podcast.
Oh,
That's what I was gonna say. There's your homework.
I
Yeah.
will do it, and I will do it. It's because I've been somewhat interested. I just haven't explored that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Very
So
much so.
watch the documentary and watch the one with the actors. It's called The
Yes.
Act, and it's Patricia Arquette and Joey King. I don't know if you know who she is, but yeah, it's surprisingly creepy just how much they seem like these people. So, and it's a little bit older. So, but anyway, there's your homework assignment. We filled your plate.
Hey, I got it, and I do think that kids who are growing up in these situations may not necessarily know that, especially when they're younger, that this isn't happening in all homes.
Sure.
It just kind of twists the brain up, and they think differently.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a point where you step outside of your parents' house. For me, it was, I don't know, probably 8 or 9, and you go and spend the night with a friend and you realize it's weird. They do things different. So for the longest time, my family, we stood around a bar top in our kitchen and we ate off of one big giant platter. Like, dad would
Oh,
make some kind of fried meat and some French fries or something, and we'd have a pile of ketchup, and we just all stood there and ate together. Thought everybody did it that way. So then to go to a friend's house and you're sitting in a chair and you're eating your own plate, it was like, you people are weird. You know, we were the weird ones. Who knew?
oh, what
But
weird, you know?
yeah,
That's
you just
fun though.
Yeah,
it was very fun. It was a lot of fun.
it
But
sounds like fun.
But once you get out and you realize other people are, treated differently and parents act differently, it changes a lot, in your structure of the way you understand family to be. Um, and sometimes, it's just really a dramatic, that's something tough that a child has to go through to have that understanding of, oh, maybe there's something wrong. I can't imagine that process in a child's mind.
Yeah.
And then you've got, Gypsy Rose, who was never let out of the home. No one ever saw her. So she had nothing to compare it to. It's
Mm-hmm.
just tragic.
It is so
Very.
sad. And my understanding is the mother made her actually sick by giving her whatever. So she maybe didn't even know what it felt like to feel normal and to feel good and to have a social life and, care about the way you look and you dress and you do your hair and you do your makeup as
Mhm.
a young girl because your mom's controlling everything. The mom
Yeah,
didn't. So,
it it brought up for me an interesting concept. If someone breaks into my home and they have a gun and I feel that they are going to kill me, they're going to end my life, I have every right, understand your ground, to end their life before they end mine. That's self-defense, and I would it would be fine. I would be cleared of that. Um, but if you've got mom and she's slowly killing a child, I mean, Gypsy was having actual health problems due to all the medication she was given, and at that point is it not self-defense? Is it not just the same as someone coming in your house? The lines are very blurred,
yeah,
very
yeah,
blurred.
too. And it's,
Well, let's
yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
no, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that, especially when you don't know what is normal. Like maybe she didn't have the courage to stand up to mom because
Hmm.
mom was a bully, and she doesn't or did not process things the way a lot of us would have.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, there was a
Absolutely.
lot of back and forth and people it's really easy for people to say, "Oh, that's crazy. I would do this or I would do that." But obviously you're coming from a whole different background, so I don't know how you could imagine really what you would do in that
Mm-hmm.
situation. I mean, it's the same thing about what we're talking about with the Menendez brothers today.
Yeah.
It's
Absolutely.
you can't imagine.
Yep. So speaking of, let's move into that. And Connie, I did want to see, have you watched anything? I think Mandy, you watched a show. You
I
want to tell us
did.
about
So
that?
I watched the documentary bit, and I also watched, excuse me, the actual show with the actors. So which I thought was very impressive. That's the Netflix Monsters series. This is the second one. It was Jeffrey Dahmer, and now we've got the Lyle and Eric Menendez story, and they really put a lot into their acting and their production on this, and I'm looking forward to actually. I gotta say, Ed Gein is going to be the next one. So, if you're not familiar with him, look that up because our boy Jax from Sons of Anarchy is going to play that
Oh,
part, and I'm just like, cannot wait for that stretch. Yeah,
Oh,
cannot wait.
wow.
I know
Okay,
that's
that's
exciting.
exciting.
I know. So I had to do that little step because it's something that's on my list of excitement for next year. But yeah, that if you did you see that, Connie? I was thinking that you saw the one
Oh,
that was acted.
I saw Monsters. I watched the
Yes.
documentary. I have watched and read so many things about this case. I did not watch the trial when it was going on, but I graduated high school in '89, the same year that Eric did. So it would have happened, all these things going on in that time period. And one thing that stands out to me a little bit, although I didn't watch the case at that time, is that my mom's best friend's uncle was their neighbor. So I remember hearing a little bit from here and there about it, and then it caught my attention, just like OJ and the other ones years after it happened.
Yeah, so it was the same for me. It was a later on thought. I didn't actually know much about any of it. I was very young and just oblivious, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
But later on, then going back and trying to see, parts, bits and pieces of the trials that you can actually pull and things like that. I did watch the documentary, but I've not seen um the show, the act, I think.
Oh, it is amazing. It's so good. All of
Yeah.
the actors were just phenomenal, in my opinion. I think awards are going to be coming out over their performances. They did a
Awesome.
really good job of
Yeah, it
putting.
is brutal though. Like my mom was actually watching it, and I said I've got some little bit of hesitancy because I heard that they went overboard, and then when I saw it, I was like, I think Connie, probably the scenes that are early on that I'm thinking of, and but I think it's important to the story. Sometimes there's just Carly and I have talked about things in the past that just went over for sensational reasons, and this it was to make a point. And the cool thing about watching that, for me, not the violence, that particular acted story, is that it did not give you one way or the other. It gave options,
Mm-hmm.
and so it was like ping ponged my brain back and forth. Like I felt this way, then I felt this way, and it was very interesting how it played out, how they set it up. They're still given the same information, but the order that they gave it and everything really was very interactive to me. Did you think so, Connie?
Yeah, I did. And I think that it being called Monsters, when you first sit down to watch it, you think that it's going to be Eric and Lyle. But as the movie unfolds or the story unfolds, you see that they're not the only monsters. Their mom and dad were both monsters in their own way. Um, Gosh, I don't know. Yeah. And it's like, is it pro Eric and Lyle getting out of jail, or is it like,
Mhm.
no, they shouldn't be there? It doesn't tell you. It lets you come to your own conclusions.
And on a little side note, you'll never hear Millie Vanilli the same way again.
Exactly. I know that song got stuck in my head, and I wonder if I don't think this is too big of a spoiler, but in the beginning at the parents' funeral, Lyle decides to play "Girl, I'm Gonna Miss You" when he starts talking about his mom, and it's like everybody's
Yeah.
looking at each other like this is so inappropriate. And he was really into it, but even Eric was looking at him like, why?
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, that was
Carly, watch
interesting.
it. Watch it on
I,
the boat.
I'm gonna have to watch it now. So yeah, I was all about some Milli Vanilli, and then the
Oh,
whole lip sync thing came out, and I was so sad about that.
It's gonna bring it back. It's gonna bring it back for you.
it will. And my daughter is 20, almost 26. No, wait, she is 26. Duh. No, sorry. Yeah, she's 26. And she's listening to it now. I got in her car one day and I was like, "You're listening to Millie Vanilli." And she was like, "Yeah, I got turned on by Monsters." Because she and I, of course, watch a lot of the same things. And I got ahead of her at one point and I said, if you cry during this show, I need you to call me and tell me what part you cried. And she and I cried at exactly the same time. And
I
so
think
Uh,
I
funny.
think we did that too, right? I
And
think
you
we
did, yeah.
said it was the
And
same one.
we had lunch together not too long, 3 weeks ago, and we were talking about it. And yeah, you said that's the part you cried. And Mandy, I'm just going to put you on the spot. This is weird. You said, "I don't know how odd it would be for me to say this or if it's appropriate, but the boys remind you of the actors remind you of my sons Adam and Aaron.
Yes.
And the hilarious thing is, you're not the first person that said that.
Well,
so, I
didn't mean it bad. I was like,
no,
you
it's
don't
okay.
need to tell her this, but yeah, that's all I could think about for a long time was your boys. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. No, it's okay. And they would never murder their mommy. They love me very much. But there's, I think, some of the way that the characters, maybe they present themselves, their body language, or whatever. And of course, Adam and Aaron used to model. So some of the promo shots they had reminded me some of their shots, and that might be where you got that too.
Yeah, exactly. And if you want to get, I'll just say, if you want to get real weird with it, they could do a little bit of that cosplay. So,
oh yeah,
just
yeah,
saying,
blonde. They're blonde, the blonde versions, and I think cuter.
just a little bit of spray is all you need to,
That's fun. No, I thought it was the movie, I think, is important really in bringing up some of the things that still aren't really as acceptable. I remember back in that time, one thing I do remember is that everyone was talking about, oh, those boys didn't get raped. They didn't, that boys don't get raped. But yeah, they do. I mean, history shows us that they do. And unfortunately, but people made fun of Eric and Lyle. Like Jay Leno and all of those people on late night, Saturday Night Live, and I find that atrocious. Even if they may or may not have been abused, I think they were. That's not something that we should ever make fun of.
No, you could definitely hinder someone else from coming forward.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not acceptable.
Yeah. Sad.
Okay, so let's go ahead and confront the question that you see all the time is they were adults. Why didn't they just leave? Why didn't they just walk away and never look back? I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that, Connie.
My thoughts are, again, going back to the conditioning. Jose, and to an extent, Kitty, controlled every aspect of their lives from when they were little. They could have money if they were good. Oh, we're going to rip you out of the will if you're not. And they grew up with money, so they didn't know the flip side of that. So for me, it's hard to say they just wanted the money because they were probably going to get it anyway. And it's not like they were suffering for clothes and cars and, school, food, all those things. I don't think it was about the money. Did they go nuts afterwards? Yeah, I think that maybe they didn't manage money well, but that's not, I don't think it's just because, oh, suddenly we have all this money and we can do whatever we want. Forgot what your original question was.
Yeah, just countering that, well, why didn't they just leave? And I think you hit it. It's, there's a conditioning aspect of it.
Yeah. And one of them said, and go where and do what? They really didn't know because Jose made all of their choices. So, and I think that's another part about the spending. Suddenly they have freedom to spend and they just kind of went up, a little bit wild with it. But, oh, wow. I know. It's just one of those tough ones. Is it okay to kill, going through these bad things? I think no. A rational person, if we are any of us really rational, would say, hey, we're just going to go. We're going to go. But these boys one was about to start college, the other was in college, and they were completely dependent on the parents. And I think that they probably really did believe that they were going to be killed because a lot of people came forward later, confirming how Jose was. And if he said, no, I'm going to kill you. If you tell this or if you do this, I'm going to kill you. And he was physically abusive. I was just listening to a podcast earlier with Lyle talking about how when he embarrassed his dad some way, they got into the back of the car and his dad punched him in the nose. Blood was all over his shirt and his face. And he said, if you ever embarrass me again, I'll kill you. And this was a powerful man, with lots of connections, arguably maybe even mob ties, maybe not. But one business that he was involved in, I think there was an element of that, whether he was involved or whether he personally wasn't. He was bigger than life to those boys. And he was the decision maker.
Yeah, I think it's easy to think, and I hear this all the time with people, whether, even like with homeless people, oh, well, you can just go do da da da. It's like a shortcut to thinking people are not imagining themselves in that position. And just because you seem like you have everything does not mean that you have that inner power. There's a lot of people who find, especially where abuse is concerned, they find it very hard to be assertive, much less make some kind of huge dramatic change to their life. And then there's the mixed feelings too of being loyal to somebody, and you think, well, they couldn't have been loyal to them if they killed them, but actually, they talked a lot about that. They did feel that. There's a lot of mixed feelings, and as you said, Connie, like where would they go and what would they do? It's not as easy as that, and I'm sure they felt this weighing back and forth. About did they love their parents or did they despise their parents from what was done to them. But I think a lot of that is just people saying things like it's really simple, and
Mm.
it's nothing about that story is a simple story.
Oh no, no. And at one point, one of the boys said he wouldn't let us go. We were his property. He was not just kind of like battered women. In some cases, the man will, I guess it could be reversed, will not let their partner go, and they'll come after them. They'll whatever they'll do to them. I think there was real fear there because these boys have been controlled in every way. Even their bodies were subject to Jose and his decisions.
Yeah, Carly and I had talked about that, and I said, if the same people who said this, would they say the same thing about a woman who was abused? Would they say, well, why didn't you just leave? I mean, that's the whole point, is that they're struggling. There's a real struggle inside, and it's frustrating for any of us who have not had that experience to sit back and watch that and think, why don't you just get out of there? But it's a different mindset, and it's an abused mindset.
Yeah. And one statistic I had read years ago was that a woman will typically leave 7 times before it sticks. And you think 7 times of leaving, that's a lot of times. But then you go back, maybe for convenience or fear, or maybe for financial reasons. But people just, I think it's important that we try to put ourselves in someone else's shoes before we judge too harshly.
We had even, brought up at some point Stockholm syndrome and, just what that entails. Even after everything has happened, Lyle, I mean, adamantly protected his dad's image. And just in that, I mean, you just think, oh my gosh, this person's going to need some serious counseling. It was a hero and your enemy in one.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you separate those things?
And who you admire. I mean, I have known men who are, let's just say, powerful, strong, connected in the community, and there are aspects to some of those personalities that are arrogant, and maybe they think they're above the law and all that. And while you may see that that's disgusting, you think that part of them is it's bad, but then there's another part that might be like, well, this is a strong man. He's taking care of his family, he's taking care of his business, he's doing those things. So
Right.
he's both an angel and a demon, if you want to put it that way.
Right. Right. Well, these boys sat in court on trial twice. Uh, and they looked very different. The
Mm-hmm.
trials looked night and day different. So their first trial, that's what I want to kind of talk about here is I found it odd. All of the men in the jury voted for murder as the sentence, and all of the women voted manslaughter. Um, why do you think that is?
I think that is, as a mother of young men and a young lady, you want to protect your children, and some of I mean, I was the age of at least one of them at the time, so I didn't see it that way then. But now, when I even look at the movie or looking back at the documentaries, we say they're adults, but were they really adults? Because they're, let's see, 18. One was 18, the other was what, 19 or 20, maybe 20,
Mhm.
something like that. And people who are raised without making a lot of decisions for themselves are, I don't know if you would want to say arrested development, but maybe a little bit of that. And it was, to me, it was like, was it even real to them when they were planning it? Or was it just this big idea? And then when it happened, Eric said that 15 seconds after they killed him, that he didn't want to do that. He regretted it and it was over, but it was all too real, and it became something that they had to deal with. I also have heard multiple places in research that for 15 minutes they sat there. They sat there and they waited for somebody to come because somebody had to have heard the shotguns. They waited for the police to come, and when they didn't, they were like, "Okay, we might be able to just move on, cover this up."
And don't you think, as far as like the jury goes and all, the
Oh
time period played, it's okay. The time period played a lot into that, the way men were seen or supposed to be seen at the time. I think
yeah.
that the sexual abuse that was, whether it was true or not, there's a lot of back and forth on that. But just the idea, the speculation of that, I don't think a lot of men found that relatable, upbringing and such, of that didn't happen, those kind of things didn't happen, or that toughen up kind of thing. I mean, it's really pretty repulsive, that things would be questioned, but it was where we were at that time period.
And if those things happened, people didn't talk about them.
No.
I do recall even back then thinking that is kind of odd. And, do boys get raped? And I didn't have really any knowledge about it at that time, but it did seem odd. It seemed odd because people didn't talk about those things, but clearly they've been going on,
Do you
and
think it would be different now if the trial was
yeah,
now?
I totally do. Don't you ladies think it would be?
Mhm.
I
I think
don't
it
think
would be much more open shut.
I think it would be more of a manslaughter, and they would have done some of their time, and then they probably would have been out by now. I don't think it's okay that they killed their parents, but I don't think that they were. I don't think they should be in jail for the very rest of their lives, considering that their parents, yes, gave them a lot of material things, but they treated them very poorly, with their words, with their actions. And certainly, if I don't know what we can say on your podcast, but a lot of podcasts say SA happened. Are we allowed to say that? I don't know. Um,
We
you know,
just say what we want to say.
we say what we want to. Okay.
We don't follow rules that well yet.
Yeah. So if sexual abuse is present anytime, it's horrible. But if it's present in a family, that is just so beyond these people who are supposed to be taking care of you.
Mhm.
And it's would be embarrassing. It would be shameful. It would be horrific. So I can see why they didn't initially say that. In their shoes, I wouldn't have wanted to admit to that either, because it would have been just the worst.
Yeah. Mandy, I think you really hit it. It's the time period was just so different, and I think if it was modern day, it would look a lot different. The second trial is what I have a problem with.
Oh, me
Uh,
too.
Me too.
so
We're all in agreement.
same, yeah, all in agreement. We have the same judge, and the judge is upset because one of the boys spoke with a reporter from jail about the judge. Do you remember which boy? Was it Lyle?
Probably Lyle, if I were guessing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it got back to the judge. So we have the same judge in the second trial who does not allow any testimony. So there goes all of the testimony, about dad's behavior and what has been seen in the past, what people have seen the boys go through. I believe Lyle was not even questioned in the second trial.
Yeah, he did not take the stand.
He didn't testify at all. That was shocking to me because that was a big part. How can you try
That was
something?
weird.
It was just,
Wrong. And I
yeah.
have to say, I have personally witnessed judges sorry, but multiple judges, I can think of 3 right now in this area, or who were at one time, who make decisions based on how they feel, or how their day's going. And it's not fair, especially in a possible death sentencing, or life in prison. And this judge was sickening to me. He abused his power.
Unfortunately, I've seen that
Absolutely.
as well, personally, and it's not to say they're all like that, but it is
Oh no,
infuriating.
just like anything
Yeah.
else, we have good and bad.
Well,
And
and with it being, yeah, right. Well, with it being later, I think that the jury may have been swayed in a different direction, but manslaughter was taken off the table. So
mm,
it's either free or not. I mean,
yeah,
they really they had no hope from the beginning.
that's
No hope.
true. That's true. And I think that's a huge problem with this whole case, is the way the second trial went.
Well, let's fast forward to today. You have two men who are getting up there. I mean, they're not old by any means, but they're not seven, or I think it was, you said 18 and 20, when it happened. We're
Yeah.
looking at way later in life. They
53.
are,
Yeah. Yeah. 53 and maybe 56, something like that.
yes.
Yeah.
So they still have they have life to live. Outside or behind bars. They've got some time. They are not a danger to society, right? I mean, there's no reason that they're gonna come out and start killing people.
Yeah.
Why would they not be released?
That's a good question. I think there are those, like the original prosecutor for the first trial, who believe that they're just, they did this, it's horrible, they should never get out, period. That's it. Um, and then there are other people, like all of these TikTokers and, the younger generations, who's like, wow, this wasn't fair. And they recognize that it's not fair. Um, y'all probably noticed that I think it was the district attorney said, yeah, let's reopen this case. And then he was voted out, and the new one's like, hey, give me some time to look this up. Let me see how this is going. And I think that's kind of cruel in a way, because it's like, oh, we might get out. We might get out before Thanksgiving. That didn't happen. They're not going to get
Right.
out Christmas, but maybe I think they have some kind of hearing, if I'm not mistaken, in January. But it's like, whoa, you think that you might get out, and then you don't. It would be confusing. Also, I think that in a way, having spent time in jail probably developed some of their character, and probably shaved off some of that entitlement that growing up with money will give you. And they were able maybe to connect to other people. Maybe they didn't have a lot to choose from, but they had the people they were in there with. And I've watched some podcasts about people who were in jail with them, and they were like, these guys are real solid. People go to them with their problems. And, I think if not both, Lyle continued his education. They both do some outreach, and perhaps they wouldn't have been like that. Probably Lyle would have grown up to be a lot like his dad. And who knows about Eric?
Mm-hmm.
So I
Mm-hmm.
think that good can come out of almost anything. Not that I would want to have my character built in jail, but I think that, maybe they did learn some things and they grew
Yeah,
up.
I'm all about redemption, that
Yeah, yes.
opportunity. But obviously, we don't want people out in society. You haven't earned that if you are dangerous. I'm not against the system in that way. It's just, again, gosh, there's just so much gray area with all of this. But as you said, are they dangerous to, was that just a specific situation because that was their abuser? That was that was something personal to them, or are they just something wrong with them that would cause them to be a danger in society with repeat behavior? I don't know.
To me, it's like, again, at that time in their lives, how they had been conditioned. Their dad was like, hey, you can steal, you can lie, you can cheat, you cannot get caught. And so they were, especially, I think Lyle might have, just in my own observation, might have bought into that more. Like, hey, um, I'm Lyle Menendez. You're not going to tell me what I can do, or whatever. And Eric might have been a little softer, but there would have been, I think, that entitlement there as well that makes us not be as good a people as we could be. So yeah, if his dad had lied, still stolen, cheated, and the boys had already gotten in some trouble for burglaries, and I think they had sometimes acted up in class. They would vacillate between kind of acting up. Eric cried a lot. He would cry if he even didn't get a grade that would get him in trouble at home. So there was that, all of that, back and forth. And then I think maybe, in my opinion, I think Lyle might have just developed a hardness to cope with the things that were going on in home. So a lot of times, unfortunately, doesn't that continue, you know?
So
So
I have some thoughts.
yeah,
One, I know that Connie, you and I have looked at a lot of cases where you see people who have done horrific things that are walking free right
yeah,
now. So then to look back and go, wait a minute, this person did this and they're free to go with
yeah,
these boys, So just to compare cases, it'll make you angry. There's just a fire inside. I think there was also maybe a little bit of a psychological thing and a protectiveness with Lyle and Eric. Lyle really was, I'll say, more of a father figure to Eric than his dad was.
yeah,
He was more of a, and so, you get that mama bear, papa bear, I'm going to protect this person at all cost. Maybe Lyle felt that and knew if Eric's getting hurt in this, Eric's going through the things that I've been through, I'm going to put a stop to that. So is it, again, it's not self-defense, then it's, defending someone else. There's just so many blurred lines in the
yes.
entire case that I don't know. It's
I do.
tough.
I admire how Lyle tried. Maybe,
Hmm.
and he was a young man. He didn't know exactly how to protect his brother, but I believe that was a big part of it. I do think that he
Yes.
was trying to protect his brother, and who knows what Jose said to those boys. After, if it is correct that Eric told Lyle, "Hey, Dad is still doing this to me." Lyle confronts Jose, and it's like I wouldn't imagine that he was going to let that come out. So there would be that fear of, hey, he's going to kill us. He's not going to let his reputation go down. And don't forget that one of those boys from the band Menudo claims that Jose sexually assaulted him after signing them to RCA Records.
Right. Right. Well, Mandy, you and I have talked about social media on our podcast a lot and just the influence that the internet in general, but social media specifically has. I don't know if you remember in the documentary, someone mentioned, well, just because we've got, the Free the Menendez movement going on doesn't mean we can retry cases. Tell me your thoughts on that. What do you have an opinion on social media getting involved and pushing for justice or change?
I
I mean,
think it's something I'm a part of, but yet I think it's very dangerous. I
Yeah.
think it's very dangerous either way because it's people. It's not people who have been chosen for anything. It's not necessarily anyone who has done their homework, or maybe you've got someone who's done too much homework. But at the same time, it could be used for so much good and so much information. But at the end of the day, to what good? Are we really just hearing it, processing it, getting our own opinions about it? I heard a story just real quick recently about someone on social media that people were really getting fired up about because it's an emotional charge, when people get on here, whether it's for good or bad. And one of the people who had been following decided to do this like deep dive into this person's life and found where they lived and did all this, found where their husband worked and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, ooh, where's that leading? So, in the best situation, I'm all for it
Mhm.
because it can bring attention to something, but it's really shaky grounds. I mean, what do you guys think?
I think you're right. I think that it could be used for good or bad. In the case of Keeslin Roberts, who Carly's worked on as well, um, people will kind of put leads out there. You follow them, and you know some things are going on, but there's nothing you can do about it. I don't know what I'm trying to say with that. I think I'm trying to say that um, sometimes people will come out and share information that could help solve a case. But like what you talked about, I certainly wouldn't want people knowing where I live, especially the way I will post things sometimes, not angrily, but just, my thoughts about the case, especially Keeslin's case. Um, I don't know. Didn't Gabby, is it Gabby Petito? Is that her name? Wasn't her case largely solved due to, the web sleuths?
And that's the thing. That's where it's a help.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I definitely am all for web sleuthing. I know I think that we don't have all the facts, but if some amateur person, discovers something, finds something, why not? What could it hurt? I understand police can't chase leads from amateur,
Sure.
sleuths. That's just not gonna, they would be busy forever. Um, so I do believe in a group of people settling down together and looking at a case, and just seeing, hey, what can we find out? What can we pass on? And then you give it to the authorities and you let them take it from there. I think in the aspect of social media standing up and different movements, I think it can be for good. Ultimately, there is a judicial system and it's in place for a reason. And sometimes it works and sometimes it fails people. Uh, I don't think there's anything wrong with some people coming together and going, hey, I think this needs to be looked at again. Mandy, I think you're absolutely right, though. You have some that'll just hear what they hear, that's on their feed, and not the other side, and they don't look into it and just get all worked up and in a tizzy. So there's a lot of like filtering through some of that. But I think there is some good there. There are people who are out and looking into things and sincerely want to see change,
I
and
just
they're
think
listening.
though, one of the downsides could be that you get an opinion or you have an opinion about something, and so then you use everything you can grab to support that opinion.
Yes.
And because there's enough out there, excuse me, on any subject now that you can take to support what you think. And before you know it, you can really, I mean, I felt this personally, you can really think, I think I've got it. I think I know it. And if you have that analytical mind and you have that curious nature where you just can dig and dig and dig, I think it can become unhealthy. But, what if you were that person? Like, how do you put a cap on that when it's like, what if you were that person that solved it? Because the police only have so much time. For some reason, some of these people have like an enormous amount of time.
Good point. I think it comes down to responsibility too. We need to be responsible about the things that we share online.
Yes.
A lot of things in the Keesland case, I wish that I could share, but there's liability, there's no proof necessarily, and you can't just go out and say this person did this or they said that because you don't know 100% for sure. And I think it's very irresponsible to share like locations of where people live or flat out saying this person did it when we don't have proof and we don't know. So again, responsibility should play a hand.
Absolutely. The first thing I do is especially with the true crime cases, if I believe something to be true, 100% I believe it's true, I try to prove it false. And that's for myself.
Yeah.
Because I think, you've got to see both sides of it. You've got to realize that, that strong hunch that you have might be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so to look at both sides and weigh it out responsibly is very important.
Yeah. And we're all human, whether we're Eric and Kyle Menendez, we're the judge, we're the prosecutor, the police, or whomever. We're all human and none of us are perfect. And we
Yeah.
make mistakes. and we're wrong about things sometimes. So I guess maybe in my case, sometimes I have to be really careful not just to get angry at someone who I feel like you're not doing your job. Why don't you go? But like you guys said a moment ago, or one of you, I think Mandy said, you only have the police only have a certain amount of time. And maybe that's not even, they've been told to stand down or stand back until something else comes. So,
Yeah, they definitely have a system in place. It's not like us, they have certain ways, certain standards. They have to answer to that. They can't just do anything the way that they want to do it. If our hands are tied to a degree, can you imagine? So in no way, am I pointing fingers at police force or, investigators, anything like that. But I do think it might be good to take both sides into consideration because you're looking at things from different ways. And I do believe some people almost have like a sixth sense about things, and maybe they could pick up on something that somebody else can't. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a whole other podcast, right?
Yeah.
I love it. Well, so I'm going to wrap us up by saying one, there are petitions online that you can sign, and that is simply to have the case reevaluated. Is that correct, Connie?
Yeah. Pardon me. Yeah, I signed a petition a while back, before the last DA had decided to relook at it. Um, I'm trying to think. I'll put it on my Facebook, Connie Hall Scott, because I got to go look it up. I can't remember exactly what it is, but yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of people have reached out to the people out in LA who, the decision makers, the DA, probably not the judge, you're not supposed to, but people may. Um, I think that whatever decision they make, they're going to have to realize they'll be held accountable for. Either you're keeping these boys in jail for the rest of their lives, and should you be? Or then there's, pardon me, the other side who feels like you're looking at this case because of all these TikTokers or for what all these, not just that, the Menendez thing, and also a letter that came up that Eric had written to his cousin talking about the abuse. These two things are factors. And to me, another thing that makes it more something we should look at is, like we talked about, the second trial. The second trial, I think a lot of poor decisions were made. So, that I'm going down another rabbit hole with this, and I don't even remember what your original question was. But yeah, I think it should be looked at. And there are petitions that can be signed, and you can get online and see how you can voice your opinion, even though we don't live in LA. It's really a national story.
Absolutely. Well, Connie, we appreciate you coming on with us today.
It was fun, as always.
Yeah, a lot to talk about.
Yeah, we have several other topics that we want you on for, so
I'm always available.
awesome. Well, to our listeners, we hope you've enjoyed this episode. And if you have thoughts, questions, comments about the Menendez case or anything else, we want to hear from you. So drop us a line and we will be back soon.
Okay.